In this video, we're going to talk about package management under Linux. Installing packages, removing packages, looking at the details inside of packages, as well as defining what kind of catalogs we want to be able to have in our environment so that we can install additional packages that might be necessary. So we'll go ahead and we'll start off in a CentOS machine. First thing we're going to talk about is clearing out the catalog. There is a local catalog on this machine. Basically, last time packages were installed, it updated the catalog online and then kept a local copy so it's a little bit faster for it to be able to search through in the future. If we want to clear that catalog out, maybe it's an old catalog, we would do a sudo yum clean all, and that just cleans out all of the repositories, all of the categories. And we can see specifically there are repositories for base, extras, and updates. All right, so that cleans out the catalog. That means that we will now be getting the latest and greatest information from online. So let's go ahead and install some software. So sudo yum install httpd. We want to install Apache on here. So because our catalogs are clean, it's going to go online and download the latest catalogs from online and then find information about HTTPD and or Apache in order to install on this computer. So there we go. It's downloading the catalogs for base, extra, updates from the various sources online. Once it's downloaded that information, it will process it and then start to find the HTTPD service and all of its dependencies. And there we go. It says, great, we've got this HTTPD application that you wanted. There are some additional dependencies that must be installed. We will go ahead and install those for you at the same time. Do I want to do this? Yes. So it then downloads those packages from online and installs them. At this point, you're thinking, we've done this before. We've done this like a lot before. Finding out what the package we're supposed to install is the big question, but actually installing it is a piece of cake. And you would be absolutely correct. There we go. We've gone ahead and we've installed it along with all the dependencies. Perfect. Apache web server is now installed on this machine. If we wanted to uninstall it, well, we did a yum install in order to install the package. Let's think about what we would do to remove it. And my first thought would be uninstall, but my first thought was wrong. It is actually remove. So yum install and yum remove, and then this will go ahead and it will remove the HTTPD package for me. There we go. So we just removed Apache web server from this machine. So what if that was, what if we knew that we wanted to set up an HTTP server, some sort of a web server, but we weren't sure what it was called? Well, this is where some of the additional yum commands come in, such as yum list. Let's say I know I want to do something with HTTP. I'm not sure that it's what it's called. I don't know it's HTTPD, but it's HTTP something. So I'm going to do a yum list HTTP star. The star is a wildcard character, which stands for 0 or more characters. If I hit enter, it then lists me out all of the applications that are available to me that start off with HTTP. We've got an HTTP parser, components, HTTPD, and HTTP unit. So it can help me find what packages might be available for my system. So I believe it's HTTPD that I want to run, but I need more information about that. By the way, the package name is before the .x86_64. That actually has to do with the platform. x86_64 means a 64-bit system, as opposed to the i686 i686 is also, let me correct that, is also a 64-bit system. That is the Itanium 64-bit system. You've probably never seen one and probably never will. There are additional i386 versions out there. We're not seeing any in this list, however. But so I want to get more information about HTTPD. So in that case, I do a yum info HTTPD. Let's actually sudo that. And this gives me information about the HTTPD service or application, which specifically is, hey, here's a description of it. Here's where to get more information. Here's the summary, licensing, and so on. Great. So it's giving me lots of information about it. Let's see. One more thing while we're here. RPM-Q, Q for query. RPM, Red Hat Package Manager, -Q for query, and HTTPD basically will tell us if this package is installed or not. You can actually use this if I do an RPM-QA, A for all, and it will tell me if all the packages that are installed on this computer. If I need to have another system that looks exactly the same, I can do this RPM-QA in order to list all of the packages on my machine so that I can then have the second computer set up exactly the same way. Okay, so still working with HTTPD, there were some dependencies there. If I remember correctly, when we installed it, there were some dependencies needed. I don't recall what those dependencies were anymore. So I need to find out more information for that. Again, yum comes in handy. There's another command called deplist for HTTPD, and this will show me all of the dependencies that are necessary for HTTPD to work. And we can see here, okay, so it's looking for HTTPD, and it says that there's a dependency for bin.sh, and that comes from the package bash. There's a dependency for MIME types, which is all based off of mailcap, and group add, which is all based off of shadow utils. There's a lot of dependencies we didn't see previously because they were already installed. But there's all the dependencies that are necessary for a system to run the HTTPD package. And this could be used for any other packages we might have. All right, and then lastly, what files were installed when we installed HTTPD? What exactly, where are all the config files? Where are all the settings set? Where should I look for everything having to do with the HTTP package? And for that, there's a command called repo query --list. And I'll say again for HTTPD, and this will essentially break out the HTTPD application and tell me all the files that are created or configured with this application. And so where all the help files are, where the configuration files are, where the data files are. It should be coming back here shortly. There we go. So very quickly, let's see, we've got var www. If you've seen me installing HTTP in a prior video, you know that most everything is under var www/html. Well, it turns out there's also some stuff under user share HTTPD. Maybe I didn't know that. There's stuff in the share man pages. Let's see, user share, a whole lot of files as I'm scrolling up here having to do with user share. There's then also user share doc, userlib64. All these files are included with the HTTPD service, including, oh, right there, that's probably one that's very helpful. Etsy httpd/conf.d/readme. If this was the first time of me installing this service and I didn't know what to configure, that's probably the file I would start by looking at. All right. So now all of these files, they're able to come to our systems because of the repositories that we're pointing to. And where do we find these repositories? Well, the repositories are actually listed in the /etc/yum.repos.d directory. If I do an ls here, I can see I have, 7 different files. I have one for CentOS base, CentOS debug, CentOS media, CentOS vault, CentOS CR, whatever that is, CentOS fast track, and CentOS sources. Inside of these, I can then look at and see more detail. Let's see, it's cat, the etc yum.repos.d /CentOS base.repo. Inside of this, we can see the actual web locations. For instance, the CentOS release location for the base is in this mirror URL. So it goes out to this one website at mirrorlist.centos.org in order to download packages for the base image. Same thing for updates. It looks in pretty much the same place, but looking specifically for updates. Same thing for extras. And then there's even CentOS Plus, whatever CentOS Plus is. And you'll notice that this guy actually has enabled equals 0. So that repository, CentOS Plus, is available to us. However, it's currently disabled. So I could go in there and I could turn that on from enabled 0 to enabled 1. And then suddenly I would have more packages of whatever's included in the CentOS Plus repository. So there we go. We can start adding in more and more information. And there were several, 7 different 7 different repositories listed there, or groups of repositories. We can even add in additional third-party repositories. For instance, there's a repository called EPEL, or Extra Packages for Enterprise Linux. And we can add this. It's actually a fairly simple process. Sudo yum install EPEL release. And again, it's just a set of repositories that are out there. CentOS decided they weren't necessary for the majority of their environments, but some people, some enterprise environments need those. And so now if I look at my repository directory, I went from having 7 to having 9 repositories. So I now have an EPEL repo and an EPEL testing repo. And it's just that simple. If we cat those, see, the EPEL repo starts looking at extra packages for Enterprise Linux 7 from fedoraproject.org. Wow. So sometimes there's packages you want that aren't necessarily included in the default repositories. And this is a way to be able to find those additional repositories. Speaking of repositories, there's actually times where you might want your own local repository. Say you have a large number of Linux machines and you don't want them downloading from the internet. I can define one of those machines as a repository and then have all of them point to me. I just go in and I change those configuration files we just looked at. I change the URL to point to my repo, my local repo server. The process is actually I want to say it's simple, but it also has a lot of steps. What we do is we essentially create in the HTML directory or in the HTML site several subdirectories such as base, CentOS Plus, extras, updates, and whatever else you might want. Sudo. The make dir-p means create these directories and all subdirectories as necessary. We then put it into these squirrely brackets or curly braces, however you want to call them, which means make each one of these. So it created the var www html repos base directory, and then var www html repos CentOS Plus and extras and update. Once that's done, we can use a command called repo sync. There's lots of switches here. Don't take my word for it, look them up. And here we're specifically going to tell it, go ahead and synchronize the repo base. Only get the latest and greatest versions. Don't get last week's version or last month's version. Download the metadata and download it to that one of those directories we just created. Repos. All right, so assuming I did not do any typos for our www HTML repos sudo. Assuming I did not do any typos there, what this is going to do is this is going out to the internet. Again, it's looking at the catalog online, and then it's saying, hey, give me all of the base packages. Once I see all of those base packages, download them to the local computer. This takes a couple of minutes for it to even get started, but what will happen is it will start downloading thousands and thousands of packages to the local computer that all of my other machines can then point to in order to get their updates, or in order to get their packages from. All right, so while that's going, or while it's trying to go, one of the great reasons for doing this, it not only is to save yourself internet bandwidth when you're downloading packages on lots of machines, but also allows you to maintain the updates that are on your systems. If everybody points to a local repository in my environment, then when new updates come out, they won't necessarily get them. They will only get them when I download them to my repo server, to my repository server. Say I want to update everything on a quarterly basis. Every single quarter, I go through and I update my repository here. I run the same repo sync command we're seeing right now, and it downloads the latest versions of all of these apps. Once those apps are downloaded, then all of the additional clients in my environment can download them directly from my repo server. It makes sure everybody stays in sync with the same updates. Now, as you can see, there are over 10,000 updates to be downloaded here. I'm going to hit Control C and I'm going to cancel this because I don't really want to wait for 10,000 updates. There we go. However, I can then look at these files. Let's see, that's in var www HTML repos, and that was under base. We'll see a couple of files in here. It all went under that packages folder there. So if I now look under packages, I will see the 69 packages that actually successfully downloaded prior to me canceling. The last thing I need to do, if I go back up one directory there, we'll see this comps.xml file here. That is actually the catalog that I've been talking about all this time. I need to update that comps.xml file so that it will look in my packages directory and create a catalog based off of that. So for that, that is the create repo command -g comps.xml /var www HTML repos base. And so that will go through, looks at all the packages. It shows a couple of errors because I killed the download halfway through, but then updates the comps.xml so that when my clients query against my machine, they then see the updates that are on my machine. If you want to do this, don't just take my video for all of the expertise. There are a lot more steps here. We're only looking at just the base packages here. There were, let's see, the CentOS Plus, the extras, the updates, and a whole lot of other packages necessary for your environment. So definitely look online for more detailed descriptions of how to make this work. But at least you can do it. At least it's an introduction on how to get it done. All right, so that was an intro to installing and managing packages under CentOS. Let's look at a Red Hat or an Ubuntu machine. Under CentOS, we used yum install. Under Ubuntu, it's fairly similar, except it's apt install. And in this case, the command or the application is called Apache 2. Apache 2 versus HTTPD, it's the same thing. They just call them two different names. Why? I'm not entirely sure. Apache is much more specific or much more granular as far as the application that you're running, as opposed to Nginx or Tomcat or other web servers out there. HTTPD is more generic. So which one you want to say is correct is up to you. So just like with yum, apt is installing Apache and it's installing all of the associated dependencies with it. And actually, I just realized I missed a step. I didn't update the catalog. Oh my goodness. Ubuntu has catalogs the same way that CentOS did. In order to do that, sudo apt update. And this will actually go out online, download the latest catalogs to the local machine. And then when you do the install Apache, it will, or install, Apache 2, it will use the local catalog. Slightly different process. CentOS, when you say install, it downloads the catalog. Ubuntu, it only downloads the catalog when you tell it to download the catalog. So you can go off of older information if you desire it to. All right, so that was install. Just like with yum, it's remove. For remove Apache 2, if I type it correctly. When we do this, I'm actually going to say no. It says, hey, we're going to remove Apache 2. But there's some additional packages that were installed when you installed Apache that aren't required anymore. So in order to do both of them, both Apache and all the dependencies, we can use auto remove. So sudo apt auto remove Apache 2. And this will do everything in one step. I could also do it in two different steps. One of removing Apache and then just running auto remove without any options, such as that. And that will remove all unnecessary packages on the system. And then lastly, before we finish up, is the local catalog for the machine. And that is under the, cat etc apt sources.list, not the local catalog, the sources to look at to find the catalog is in sources.list. And here we can see, here's one of them. So let's actually scroll to the top. So we have what's called a deb line here, which is to install updates or packages from the archive.ubuntu.com/Ubuntu in the disco main and restricted folders. You can also look for security updates and multiverse updates. Yeah, all of these lines mean something. They actually have quite a few descriptions here in what those lines mean. And then there's some sources that are commented out. For instance, here is their partner directory. These are not provided by Ubuntu, oftentimes having to do with licensing reasons. So if I wanted the partner sections in here, what I would do is I would edit the file and I would find this line and I would uncomment it by removing the pound sign. Once I've uncommented it, then do an apt update in order to download the latest catalog. Let's see, last thing, there are also some deb-src files here, or lines, that has to do with the source files. So the actual source files they use to compile to make these programs. If I'm a developer and I'm modifying them or updating them in some way, I may want those. Chances are you don't. So there you go. That's how we manage and maintain packages on our Linux machines. Under Ubuntu here, we can add additional sources the same way that we were able to add them under the CentOS machine or Fedora / Red Hat type systems. We can do the same thing here.